welcome everyone to Spiritgrow tonight. For those of you who this is their first time here, welcome. My name is Monash Law School. I'm the director. But enough about me, I want to talk about Jonny. Well, I've got all the time allocated to me. We're in the middle of a very, very important series on change. And when we were putting this series together, Jonny came up as an obvious person that we need to get as a guest speaker. And the reason why it was obvious was not because his company is the Change Agent Network, although the name would come up in Google if you Googled change. We actually wanted Jonny because the mere fact that you're sitting in this room tonight and having a reasonably high quality program and event is probably thanks to Jonny, because overall, Jonny's been working with us for a number of years and has just made each of the people who work here better functioning people, but more importantly has made Spiritgrow much more highly functional. Not that we weren't, but we discovered we could do a lot more. A lot of the things are obvious, a lot of the things are, that's so simple, but for some reason no one actually bothered to teach us the simple things in life. And so when talking about change is something that is done on a commercial level, change is something that's done at business, change is something that happens at work, change is something that happens in a community, but change also takes place on a personal level. And in fact, most changes that take place within the community and most changes that take place on a national level or even on an international level have started somewhere with an individual. And therefore, this series is not about global change, it's not about communal change, it's not just another well-wishing TED Talk, and if you just listen to Jonny for 18 minutes, we could all change the world. This is actually going to be a proper workshop in which the only thing that will walk out of here changed, hopefully tonight, is us, the individual us. And so it's a real pleasure to have Jonny, and we're in for a real treat. And this is slightly different to what we've done for the first half of the series, but roll with it. Allow a bit of change in the series itself. I would also like to point out that next Monday night is the last of our guest speakers for this series, with Dr. Debbie Herbst talking about change from a completely different point of view, talking about change from a food point of view and the way we eat and nutrition. But that's not for tonight. Just whetting your appetite, I give you over to Mr. Jonny Schauder.
Much for, there we go. Okay, talk more quietly. Thank you all very much for being here. I think that needs to be turned down. Trace? What do you reckon? Is that right? Okay. This is very exciting for me. It's not only the opportunity to expose everybody to some really good change thinking and theory, but you probably noticed that it is my book launch. When Spiritgrow invited me to come and do a guest talk and said, look, we'll probably have about 80 people in the room, I said, well, I may as well launch my first book. When did I decide to do my first book? Well, it was something I decided not too long after Label actually told me to do the talk. And this is what change is all about, and it's what we're going to be talking about for the next hour. I'd like to acknowledge that I've got a range of people in the room here, from the people that are on the Spiritgrow change journey to old school friends and business colleagues and everyone who's made the effort to come. So thanks very much. The talk is going to centre around the word inspire. It's a word that has dogged me my entire life. People are always saying you've got to be more inspirational, you've got to know how to inspire. Inspire who? Inspire yourself, inspire others. That's really where we're going to centre on for the next hour. If we're successful, I agree with Menachem that hopefully you walk out of here somewhat self-inspired. I hope I can inspire you a little bit, but coming out of this somewhat inspired about what you can change. And if you do change the world, well, good on you. The theory doesn't change. Yeah, the theory is applicable in any context where you're going to go. The hour itself, it's going to be pretty much a workshop, so get ready to get involved. I'm going to talk for a little bit, but the idea is that you do actually have to think through this sort of stuff. And if you don't have a pen, during the next exercise, if you can grab one from the back, because there will be some opportunity to do some self-reflection, which of course is critical in a session like this. So if everyone's ready to get into it, I literally thought we'd start with an exercise. You knew I would, Andrew. Got to start with an exercise. I want to get the word inspire going, yeah? So here we are, beginning of the financial year, 1st of July. I don't know how many of you have come for business reasons, but it's a good 12 months ahead, starting afresh. For those of you that are on the personal journey, we've hit mid-year, we're in winter. Good opportunity to stop and reflect. So here's my question, yeah? What is it that will provide you with inspiration over the next 12 months? Where will you get your inspiration from? What will inspire you over the next 12 months? Fair question? Not an easy question, yeah? Okay, here's how I'd like you to do it. Let's take about 3 minutes on this. In that 3 minutes, if you can please talk to at least 3 people. Tell them what inspires you, find out what is going to inspire them, and let's come back and talk about what the word means and where inspiration comes from. Everyone ready? I'll time it. At the end of each minute, I'll yell ding. If you like the person, get their phone number. All right? So, yeah. What is going to inspire you for the next 12 months? On. Okay. Better. I don't know if anyone wants to offer up a source of inspiration. Did anyone come up with anything that you can yell out at me? Goals. Your goals? Got to have goals. Yeah? Has everyone set goals for the year? Got to set goals. Surely, Ross, come on. Got to set goals for the year.
Yeah, mine's holidaying.
Holidaying, it's got to be inspirational, doesn't it? How inspirational is a great holiday? Yeah? Any other observations?
Being surrounded by positive people.
Got to love being surrounded by positive people. And equally, got to love challenge. Yeah? All inspiring. So what does it tell us about the word? What does the word actually mean then? Let's start from the top. Inspire means to excite, yeah, and good. Can we go any further?
Motivate.
To what, sorry? It's got to trigger something. Yeah? Inspire?
Motivate.
From inside. It should come from inside. Inspire.
So if I want to inspire you, somehow it's got to come from in you.
Inside out.
Right. That's very cool. Motivate, yeah. And although this could be a course in motivation, perhaps we'd be talking a level down. Ignite. No, that's a level up. I love that. And I think that sort of pushes it to a whole new level. If I said, come on, Phil, you've got to ignite me every time you see me. Come on, man. You can do this. Well, let's go back to basics, yeah? And again, I'm a psychologist by registration. Forgive me, I am recovering, but I am a psychologist by registration. And the word inspire, if you go back to a straight definition, means, well, it's the opposite of expire, right? If you go back to just the pure source of it, expire means breathe out. Inspire means breathe in, right? So if we want to talk about inspiration or inspiring others or inspiring ourselves, it means breathing in, yeah? Now, it's interesting that I've got a mix of people in the room, some who have met me and heard me talk many, many times, and others who have never heard me talk at all. But let's start with some things that perhaps maybe you've never heard before. You know that you've got 3 voices for change in yourself that you have to be able to hear as you go through life. Has anyone heard this before? How many? I know we've got one psychologist in the room. How many other psychologists in the room? There's 3 voices going on within us, yeah? You've got your physical voice, which will tell you that you are sick. Yeah? It'll tell you very clearly that there is something going wrong with your body. And of course, one of the change seminars that Label and Menachem are running here is to do with the body. In fact, I think it's the next one, which will be about food and health and keeping yourself fit. I'm not giving that lecture, Al. I'm trying my best. You have to breathe into that voice, yeah? We all understand that voice has to be re-engaged and reignited continually, that physical voice. The second voice, of course, is your emotional, your spiritual voice. I mean, I love the fact that I am doing this launch and this lecture here at Spiritgrow. This is a place where the emotional voice or the spiritual voice gets its hearing. If you've never meditated or if you've never gone inside yourself to explore the universe within, there's so many beautiful places to reveal if you're prepared to go inside and have a look around. So we call that the emotional voice. And again, for anyone with an emotional interest, it's worthy to go and listen to that voice occasionally. The voice that I want to deal with as we go through today is, of course, the cognitive voice, the thinking voice. Yeah? Everyone take a minute. Can you all hear? It's called your internal voice. Well, I can hear yours, Ross. We've all got an internal voice, yeah? It talks to us throughout the entire day, the entire night. Some people call it id, some people call it ego, some people call it personality, some people call it presence, some people call it thinking. To me, I don't care so much what we call it, yeah? It's you, apparently, and it's you talking to you. And as a psychologist, you can understand that when people come to me for therapy, don't come to me for therapy. I don't do it anymore. I've lost the patience, yeah? But if you came to me for therapy, what a lot of people would say is, I can't live with myself, or I'm having trouble with myself. And you say, then what do you mean by this I and this self? And what they do is they distinguish, right, between the self and the I. And the fact that these two entities don't get along and chat away. The big message, of course, is you've got to be mates with your internal voice. You've got to hear it, you've got to love it. But overall, you've got to manage it, yeah? You're managing it right now. I don't know how you're doing that. It's late on a Monday night. You've got some guy in a brown jumper standing in front of you and jumping around. I don't know how you're engaging your internal voice, but I'm hoping that it's with me, right? Because again, without this, we can't inspire. So can everyone hear their internal voice? Have a second with it. I'll take a second with mine. It's a beautiful thing where I just went. We can talk about communication, where next time I have to take you there with me, but that's another seminar. So let's keep moving on this. What is it that your internal voice gives you? And this is where we come to the idea of inspiration or change, right? What's your internal voice saying to you right now? Probably doing a lot of things, right? It could be judging, it could be defending, it could be advising, it could be doing a whole lot of things, and you're keeping it under control. But from my perspective, the most important thing to understand about your internal voice is an important piece of basic psychology, which is that your assumptions shape your thinking shapes your behaviour, your behaviour shapes your outcomes, and your outcomes shape pretty much everything that you're going to see, right? Your outcomes shape the evidence that you're going to see on which to base new assumptions. So this is called a cognitive behavioural model. I'm a cognitive behavioural psychologist. People like me rely entirely for our professional well-being on models like this. When you come to me for help, I'll take you down this little investigatory ladder, right? I'll say, tell me about your outcomes. You say, I hate my dog. I say, that's a strange thing. What do you do to your dog? You say, I kick my dog every night. Really, Monash? Okay, fair enough. It's an interesting thing to do. Tell me about that. Why would you kick your dog? You say, well, because it's the best way to discipline a dog. And I say, really, Andrew? Where'd you get that from? You say, Johnny, my dad had 5 dogs. He would kick all of them soundly in the head every second night. 3 of them would live, incredibly obedient, until something went horribly wrong, yeah? And this would be the progression. And to achieve change, right, you need to understand this kind of methodology. Because, of course, when we try to achieve change, one thing we could do is I could say, hey, you see that behaviour that you're doing right now? Stop that. Do it my way. Change your behaviour for my behaviour. Yeah, I've got 5 kids. God help me. It's going all right. School holiday's about to start. I think I'm all right. It's not going to work, is it? I mean, it might work for a time. If I have power over you, I might be able to change you by simply saying, replace your behaviour with my behaviour. I do it better than you. Do it my way. We call this single loop thinking. It doesn't endure, but of course it can get some level of change. You decide you don't want to do it this way today, do it tomorrow a different way. Easy. Not going to endure. You could go what we call another loop down to thinking. At least you could talk yourself into it to some extent. But does everyone get that I want to get us to the point where we're working at this level here, this level of assumptions? Your internal voice is constantly feeding you assumptions about me, about this situation, about the person sitting next to you. You know that old saying, if you assume, you make an ass of you and me? It's wrong, yeah? It's wrong when it comes to talking about people. It's okay when you're talking about pieces of wood or where to lay the pipe. You can't guess, yeah? But with me, I could be bizarre tomorrow, and I could be friendly the next day, and I could be evil the day after that. And the assumptions there, you're just going to have to ride the flow because, of course, the evidence is everywhere. And you've got to put it through your razzle-dazzle machine in order to make sense of it at all. You've got to choose your assumptions. So again, I don't know if you understand that notion of choosing, but let's go through a few exercises to just get this clear, yeah? Take a minute for just 1 second to pause on your internal voice. Here's my question to you. Write down 3 assumptions you make about yourself in the next 12 months. 3 assumptions you make about yourself. Yeah? Too good looking. What 3 assumptions do you make about you? The cool thing about this question is that the process you're experiencing is actually more important than what you're writing down, yeah? I ask you what assumptions you make about you, you realise you could write anything. Your internal voice starts going off and your internal voice starts feeding you assumptions. And the cool thing is you get to choose which ones you write down on the page. You don't know where this exercise is going and I could make you share it with everyone in the room. So it pays, Phil, to think about which assumptions you've written on your sheet. We would call this self-management. In fact, we would call this discipline, yeah? Because you can write whatever assumptions you want on that sheet. The question, of course, is going to be whether you truly believe them. That's for yourself to decide. But this is a point at which we are getting to the idea of choosing your assumptions. You get to choose them right now, yeah? So has everyone got 3 on their page? 3 assumptions you make about you. Public list, private list. So let me make this just a little bit easier for you then. Okay, so again, we come down to the basic idea of change management and self-control and inspiration, yeah? We still have to come back to the idea of breathing in something, because otherwise we have nothing to work with here. There has to be a skill set. This is not something intuitive or something you were born with, it's a skill set. You should inspire me whenever you see me. Too much to ask? It shouldn't be, yeah? What we come down to is that in this assumption zone, and again, you can have a look at the sheet that you've just filled in, there's only 2 types of assumptions. You either make what's called a positive assumption or a negative assumption. Play this out, yeah? Many of you haven't met me before, yeah? There's not much evidence to go on here. I don't know what you think of men with beards. This could be a very intimidating environment if you've got a thing about beards. Nothing personal. So here's the evidence. You come to a seminar with me, you've never met me before. Your internal voice kicks in, Jeff, and you say, well, what assumptions are you going to make about Johnny? Is he a good bloke? Is he an idiot? Is he a loser? Is he here to waste our time? If you accept the negative assumption is that I'm deliberately out to hurt you. That's if you're going to make the assumption about the person. If you're going to make the assumption about the situation, the assumption you would make is that this situation is hopeless or pointless. The minute you accept that assumption, you follow, it will play out in your entire being. This is Change Management 101. If that's your assumption, your thinking must be defensive, yeah? Because if I'm out to hurt you, well then you've got to defend. Doesn't that make sense? That's what we call rational. Your assumptions shape your behaviour, yeah? In other words, you would defend. The behaviour would be what we call fight or flight in the classics. In other words, you'll take me on or you'll run away. Of course, in the real world, we don't do fight or flight as much as we used to. What we do now, Farron, is we do silence or violence. So again, think about the person that you've gone silent on for the past decade and ask yourself why you've accepted the negative assumption about that person. There must have been some piece of evidence in the past decade that made you make the fundamentally critical decision of accepting the negative assumption about them. Maybe it was a conflict, maybe it was a moment, maybe it was a discussion you had, I don't know. But again, it's a big call to accept the negative assumption because, of course, if you play that to its fullest, they're out to hurt me, therefore I defend, fight or flight, move to silence, the outcome must be distance. You'll put distance between us. And that's a good outcome. Don't tell me that's not successful. There are certain people, no? I hope it's not that many, yeah? Apparently 3% of us are clinically insane. The rest of us are just trying our best, yeah, with what we got. And we're under pressure, and we're under stress, and we're limited, and we're often disabled, and we can't really do it. We're a bit incapable, yeah? And we're just hanging in. That's the 97%. So if you choose to put distance, just understand that's the evidence that I'll see in you. And I'll work off evidence and say, what's within her? Putting distance between us. I've got to make an assumption about that, yeah? Let's go to positive assumption. You don't know me from Adam, you've walked in the room, you're a guy in a folded shirt, it's 8 o'clock at night on a Monday. The assumption you make is in fact a positive assumption, which is that I'm here to help, or that this situation is useful, and that the options are still available. There's possibility left here. If that's the assumption you choose, your thinking will be, give me a go. Thank you, I appreciate the head nod, it gives me confidence. Seriously, you need to follow me around. You're going to engage to some extent. The behaviour will actually be to interact with me. Even if it's limited interaction, it'll be to interact with me. Maybe you'll ask me a question. Maybe you'll smile at me or give me a head nod or whatever. Appreciate that. The outcome will be that we're closer. We're not going to be picking out drapes, Ray. But we'll be closer. Yeah? Why? Because that evidence feeds the cycle. I'll then see that closeness, and so the positive assumptions flow and so on. Everyone getting this? Anyone got a quick question for us?
Yeah, why can't you have something in the middle, not positive, not negative, just neutral?
Neutral. The neutral assumption, by its nature, is positive assumption because you're accepting that you don't know my story and that there's something for you to learn and that there must be a chance you're going to give me. The minute you take that assumption, you give me opportunity, you give me possibility, right? Again, don't get me wrong, a neutral assumption can, I suppose, also lead you to choose not to talk to me if you really wanted to. And again, if you read my book, I'll show you the choices coming off both, yeah? And it's true that with the negative assumption, the choices are far more limited. Does everyone follow then that we go for an ethic which says, you've got a choice to make a positive assumption. How long should you hold the positive assumption for? I mean, I've cut you once, I've let you down twice, I've broken commitments 3 times. At what point do you accept the negative assumption about me? It's a big personal choice, yeah? But again, you've got to understand that I've been doing this for 20 years, and my mentors, like Global Wolf and Menachem Wolf, are going to say, Johnny, hold the positive assumption until you can hold it no longer. What does that mean? It means when I walk out of my house and someone scratched my car and ruined my tyres, my first assumption should be, it was an accident. Thank goodness they could let out their aggression on my car instead of their children. I'm so pleased my car was available. I can do this label, I can do it, I can get there, yeah? So what is inspire? Well, let's come back to the basic proposition. Inspire says that whenever you have the opportunity, you should breathe into me. What should you breathe into me? Positive assumptions. Why? Because in that moment, the positive assumption does what? It'll give me hope. It'll give me courage. It'll reveal the unseen. It'll allow me to think about it differently. It'll give me the possibility. It'll give me the new direction, potentially. Maybe it'll give me the higher meaning. Maybe it'll give me the new context. Maybe it'll give me the sympathy that I never had. Whatever it is, what you're doing is you're breathing into me a brand new way of seeing possibility. If you breathe into me the negative assumption, understand you've also inspired me, but you've inspired me for evil. Don't get me wrong, I use the word too loosely. Of course not evil. But if you breathe the negative assumption into me, you understand I must shut this thing down, whatever it is we're talking about. So if I come to you for help, and the first thing you say is, Johnny, it's hopeless. You know the person who says, you've got no choice but. Really? No choice but? Are you kidding? Thank goodness we've got every choice. Right up until the mortal end, we've got the choice to do something different. Will it cost us? Yeah. Will it be painful? Sure. Will it be difficult? Yeah. Maybe we'll lose a relationship. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. It's possible. But is it there? Yeah, of course it's there. How long do you hold the positive assumption for? So here's my little inspiration exercise. Yeah? Go and find someone new that you haven't spoken to yet in the room. You're not allowed to speak to the same person again. Yeah? Again, they've all got name tags. You can now know them on a first name basis. Share your assumptions with them. Yeah? And together, work out which of these assumptions you would consider negative about yourself. In other words, ones that you've put down that you think are self-limiting. You've put down that you're terrible at maths. You put down that you'll never be able to influence the boss. You'll put down that you're never going to make your money on the new business that you've started up. Well, you won't have done that, Mel. Really? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what the next exercise is. But step one, go and share a few assumptions with a stranger. Yeah? Try to make it someone you don't know so that you can be a little bit more honest than had you been working with a friend. That'll require you to stand up. If you don't have a pen, grab it because you'll need it for the next bit. And in about 5 minutes, we'll get back together. But I want to give you a step in between, so I'll talk again at about the 2.5 minute mark. Good on you. Okay. There's a sheet coming around that starts formalising this little exercise. And this exercise is just a moment of therapy, if you want to call it that. It's sort of therapy in a minute. And this is where the title of this talk comes from. In other words, I think Label was brave enough, or Menachem was brave enough to call this talk Just Change. Yeah? And if you read the book Who Moved My Cheese, or any of the change books that go for an era over the past decade, they basically say, well, some of them are going to tell you that change is impossible. So people like me aren't going to accept those books because, again, you must make positive assumptions. Change must be possible. In fact, those of us who believe in change and who believe in conflict understand that when change is called upon or conflict is called upon, change is now absolutely irreversible. It's coming. We have to now go with it or manage it as we go. The assumptions that you've just written down, and you'll see on the, if you turn to the page we just headed up, top 3 assumptions, and there should be the numbers 1, 2 and 3. There should be some spares floating. Thanks, Mel. Yeah. Should give you the opportunity to just capture the 3 assumptions you've made about yourself. Now, the cool thing about this, none of us know what assumptions you make about you. Maybe you assume you're great looking. Maybe you don't. Maybe you assume that you're not good looking. Maybe you assume that you're God's gift to public speaking. Maybe you assume that you've got a phobia that would never allow you to do what I'm doing right now. Maybe you assume that whenever you look at a packet of cigarettes, you've got to continue to have another cigarette. Well, again, it's an interesting assumption that you make about yourself. You know, you can understand that I've worked with people who define themselves as addicts. And it's a word they just use very flippantly about themselves. Hi, my name's Johnny, I'm an addict. I say, really? Is there anything else to know about you? No, I'm an addict. Oh, really? Yeah. I say, it's an interesting assumption to keep about yourself. Yeah? Lots of choices about the assumptions you make. Have a look at the 3 that you've made. I'm going to ask you, of course, that critical question, which is, are you making any negative assumptions about yourself? And if so, why? For God's sake, why? Of all the people who should be making positive assumptions about you, you follow the person who should be is you. Yeah? This is what we're saying. Control your internal voice. It's got to be your friend. You've got to like it, but you've got to manage it. If it's feeding you negative assumptions, it must be tearing you down or limiting you or giving you fear or giving you anxiety. And of course, that's dangerous. Not because it's not true, Ray. Apparently, they are out to get you. But by accepting the negative assumptions so quickly, you shut down the possibilities. My daughter comes home and says she's not good at maths. I say, are you kidding? On what evidence do you accept that assumption? You're 13 years old. She says, I got 60 on the test. I say, what does that tell you? I'm going to tell you God's gift to maths. Apparently you should have got 10%. Does it make any difference now? She says, yeah, it does, actually. So here's my little moment of therapy. Go through the assumptions you've just made, and you'll see on the sheet there's the steps there, just in case you're getting a bit lost in all this, because I am going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. The first step, of course, is to take any negative assumption that you've written and do the opposite. Accept the opposite about yourself for the next year. As of right now, apparently that assumption is incorrect. The opposite is true. And whatever you want to look for the evidence to demonstrate that, find it. Why? Because it's you. You can do whatever you want. How cool is that? I'll never know what your internal voice is saying, and I'll never know the personality you choose to have. Yeah, I'm not going to give you a pencil and paper test and ask you, do you prefer to do accounting or write operas? You get to tick the box. And I'm going to tell you that based on that, you're an introvert. Come on! We're all complicated. We get to choose the assumptions we make about ourselves, yeah? So first step, get rid of the negative ones. Hopefully you haven't got any negative ones. No, of course not. For those of us that hopefully got to the point where we're not having any negative assumptions about ourselves for the next 12 months, go the next step, which is exaggerate the positive ones. Wow, you thought you were great at public speaking? Apparently you're God's gift to public speaking. You're good at helping your friends, apparently? Well, apparently in the next 12 months, not only are you good at it, we're all relying on you to do it. If you thought you were the one who's meant to be the backbone of the organisation, well, apparently if you're not there, we all crumble. And if you don't buy this, why? It's you. How cool is this? There's no practice, there's no rehearsal, you only get to do it once. This should be a great year. Inspire, breathe in what? Positive assumptions, but you've got to start with you. Yeah? So quick exercise. Take your sheet, work with the person sitting next to you if you need to, and just quickly fill this in. Yeah? Take the negative assumptions. As of today, the opposite's true. Apparently you're great at footy. Positive delusion is a key to all of this. Why? Because if you don't believe in that, you'll shut down possibility way too quickly. If you're going to tell me, Johnny, I've tried it 10 times in the past, where I've really had a go at AFL footy, and turns out I am absolutely terrified of playing AFL footy, and you've tried it and you've proved it, good, I'm not going to tell you to change it. But I'll invite you to keep testing it. Come back to you.